Hey, Bob.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
Good.
Pablo, were you here?
I'm here, Robert.
Pablo, I need to be able to share hosting duties with a couple of people tonight. I have presenters and then Karen, our committee member. How can I do that? Is that enabled? Last time we couldn't.
Let me look into it. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
I could not share the duties. Thank you. Hey, Jody, how you doing?
Robert, who do you want as co-host?
Well, our presenters, I'm sure they're going to have.
No, co-host. He wants co-host. He wants to know who do you want as co-host?
Karen is co-host.
Yeah, and
Karen is
but you're-
co-host. Okay.
and
But
Remember-
I need to have my presenters share the screen.
so they have
Okay.
to be co-host too.
No, they don't.
You can Julie, hey Pablo, it's Jody.
Hi. Oh, hi, Jody. Okay, give me 1 second. So let me. Let me change the setting for sharing so that you could have multiple people share screen.
That is essential. That's essential. Yeah.
So that's pretty much what you need, Robert.
Wait, Pablo, you didn't put it so multiple people could share, did you?
That's the only way. We don't have enough licenses to give everybody co-host.
You don't need a license for co-host.
Not to
No,
have
but-
two
but-
people
but-
be co-hosts besides the
You
original.
only need so I've run a Zoom
Can I
conference where
ask
I
a
had
question?
Okay,
ahead.
let me just interject. So Robert, what you want is so that your presenters are able to put up their PowerPoints.
Yes.
I will enable multiple sharing, and that's what you need.
So I don't have to transfer hosting privileges to a speaker.
No.
But it means
Let
that I
me-
could share my screen if I wanted to, and I could put up my baby pictures or something.
That's what I
Right.
was trying to say to.
I
that's what
understand
was
that,
trying to
Jody,
say
but
to-
it's not gonna happen. It's a small meeting.
Okay, but Bud, as host, he can cut you off if you do that.
Right.
Right, but if
So-
you have one main host who you have one main host, that's what your license is for, one host on this particular thing. But you
Right.
can make other people co-hosts and enable the setting that co-host can share, and you can have, I had 15 co-hosts with one license.
Right, but
And
in
then-
this
Did we
instance,
lose Jody?
the way we've done it is we just turn on the multiple sharing, and the host can then deactivate it once he feels everybody's gone. So that's how the office is doing it, and I just don't want to change something that we've been doing for.
No,
the
I
last
just,
few.
I understand, Pablo. I just find it really funny that we're not allowed to use chat, but anybody can share the screen. So I just find
Well,
it interesting.
It's not.
because of-
It's not anyone. The obviously the presenters and the host will be able to, shut down anyone that may be trying to share without permission. So, Robert knows what he's doing. Okay, let me just put this in for you, Robert, before I give you a host. Security. Share screen. Okay. So Robert, I've put in the multiple sharing. for your presenters, so that they can do that. I'm gonna give you host access now. Oh, you said Karen is your co-host, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. So Karen, you're co-host now. And host is Robert. Robert, do you see yourself as host?
Yep.
Okay, and everything is recording. Do you see the recording on the top?
Yep.
Okay. So Robert, so if you see on your screen, right? You see where it says share content
Let's see, share screen.
or share screen, yeah.
And then it comes to all kinds of different windows. Yep.
Right. Do you see like a little arrow on that, like on the side?
The
Little arrows.
carrot on the side of share screen.
Yep, okay. Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Right. So click there for now. And once you feel that everybody's gone and you won't be having any more presenters, you can put it back to single.
Okay.
This way, nobody can then share their screen without your permission. Okay?
Okay.
Very good. All right, everybody. Have a good meeting.
Okay.
Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you. Do we have to let people in, Bob?
I do, yeah. I just
I don't see it.
I just admitted Alan Cohen. Welcome, Alan. It's great. He's still getting on audio.
But I don't see them.
Okay. Jody, how did you enter the waiting room?
I'm ready. She got it. I put her in. All right, now I saw it.
Well, co-host is great because admitting people through the waiting room when you're running the meeting is really distracting.
I
So
know.
Co-host is really the way to go.
So who's the new person that's on the committee? I don't have that person's name.
Okay, so committee members are Courtney Dastis Galvin is a community board member. It's Deb Travis
Right.
and myself. And the fourth member is Osvalli, Osvally, Jimenez, Jiminez. Oh, here's Miss Jazwiak. Great.
Okay.
Okay. It's 7:01. If you don't mind, we'll wait about 2 more minutes before we begin. Thanks for your patience, everybody, and with the regular technology questions. We'll get right into it in about 2 minutes. Okay. Karen, the best way to get attendance is literally to take a picture of the screen.
Well, I have the names. I just check them off.
Yeah, for committee members. Yeah.
You want me to take a picture of all the other people?
Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. Well, we're going to have to get all them for minutes. Okay. So, with additional attendees, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the November meeting of Bronx Community Board 8's Environment and Sanitation Committee. and my name is Robert Fiduzzi. I'm the chair of the committee. At this point, I'd just like to have our committee members raise their hands so you can see them and introduce yourselves, Karen, and just to our public who's with us. The way we'll do this is when we do have presentations, the committee members will have the first questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. So, Karen, could you please start? And I'm just going down the list. So I'm Robert, I'm a member of the committee.
I'm Karen Argenti. I'm a community member of the committee.
Okay, Courtney,
Hi, I'm Courtney, member of the committee.
excellent. And Deb Travis,
Hey there, I'm Deb. I'm a member of the committee and a chair of traffic and transportation.
member of the community board. And Courtney is a member of the community board.
Yep.
Rob Spolter,
Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a community member of the committee for longer than anybody else that's been on this board.
you have seniority, Rob.
Yeah, seniority, but I don't count for quorum. Okay.
Then that's something. Rob also knows more about the community board than he ever wanted to know for a lot of reasons. So we're glad you're here. So with that, I'd like to say that we can start our first order of business, and we'd like to accept the minutes of October 20th. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Excellent. All those in favor?
I second it and I'm in
Excellent.
favor.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. And I just have a very short chair's report. I did want to ask before I begin if Ms. Bosch Hillary Bosch from Sanitation is here. I didn't want to steal her good news. You'll be hearing from her at the full board meeting. So let me just start with that. The Department of Sanitation is starting curbside composting pickup in our community for buildings and households that have already signed up. That will begin on December 6th. So it's great news. That's really activism from our community and from our elected officials that made that happen. We have had a lot of noise complaints at the construction site on 39 Dash Place. And we have community liaison Effie Artizzoni here. I just wanted Effie to bring that up because we have called DEP to the site, and there are some inspectors who don't show up with decibel meters, but we're getting all kinds of heartbreak from neighborhood residents about what's happening at that, and they're asking for noise mitigation, which is a construction issue. But we did just want to reiterate the need for DEP inspectors with decibel meters.
Thank you, Bob. Just an FYI, I did get several emails from the community board about that location.
Yeah.
And I sent them an extensive list of all the inspections that we've performed. Our inspectors are from the Bureau of Environmental Compliance. They do show up with noise meters, so I'm not sure. I've even noted the decibel readings and everything.
Okay.
So,
Oh,
please,
God. Okay.
yeah, please make sure. I sent some more information today. I had sent some on Monday. Actually, I'll forward it to you as well, so you
Yeah,
can see
please.
it.
I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mhm.
But it's a noisy site, according to the neighbors. So thank you for the readout of that. Thank you.
Sure.
We're getting a lot of complaints about garbage and garbage cans at 242nd and Broadway. It's always been a very messy site. We're meeting with the new sanitation superintendent from this district next week. He's already communicated that he's there on extra tours and things. So do call the community board when you see the eyesore, the garbage there at 242nd. Let us know, and or even better, call 311, and we can get the extra service there. Let's see. The sanitation just issued the snow plan, which I'll distribute to our community, to our committee, and Effie, I wanted to ask you about the Nycha drainage upgrades, which DEP has underway. And I guess just a question for you, Effie, how do we try to get Marble Hill in this? I think Marble Hill already had an upgrade.
I think they did. I'll double check on Marble Hill, but you're probably referring to the most recent press release that I sent, which noted Throgs Neck Houses actually was the one on that list.
Yes,
recently
it was.
for the
Yep, I
Bronx.
saw. Yep.
Yeah, so for that one, it was just Throgs Neck Houses, but we've done a lot throughout many developments. So if you want, I'll definitely get back to you for the CB8 location, which
Thanks.
Nycha Developments had it. Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you, Effie. And while we're on the subject of Nycha, we had a really great weekend event where a partnership of Manhattan College and a group led by Jackie Fisher and community residents got permission from Nycha to build solar panels on site. And it's really a fantastic opportunity for community residents to become environmental stewards of the environmental stewards of their community and participate in zero emission energy generation. So I invited Jackie to come at a future meeting to talk. She's got relationships with other schools, which is just a fantastic connection to have. So I hope you're all as excited as I am about more small scale solar energy going up on our property. Now, Jody, would you like to bring that up under in the pothole issue on the new business? That's where I was going to put it, but we can also talk about it now.
I just wasn't sure if Effie was staying.
That's a good question. Yeah. Effie, we had an issue about a pothole. Is it Palisades?
No, it's Edsel Avenue. It's Edsel Avenue between Bradley Terrace and the pedestrian overpass to the Metro North Station.
Hmm.
I'm
So first,
outside
let me,
here.
before you go on, can I ask Effie, this would go under new business. So Effie, I don't want to keep the entire, this is an issue that does bear some discussion. So would you
I'm
be
gonna
able to?
stay on the meeting the whole time, so if you
Excellent.
feel
Oh, that's
better
okay.
saving it, yeah, save it till the
Okay.
end.
Yeah, I
I'll
really want
stay
to go
on.
through it in detail, and thank you, Jody, for
Yeah,
waiting
yeah.
for that. I'd really
Yeah.
prefer that. Okay. So now, let's see, I think everyone has been admitted, and I really want to extend a warm welcome to first-time visitors to Environment and Sanitation Committee meetings. And Erica Joswiak and Alan Cohen are a really powerful team for presenting the city's response both to stormwater as part of their reporting responsibility to the city council, but also a response to Hurricane Ida, which was really devastating. So may I call you Alan and Erica? I don't want to
Yes,
presume.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go by Alan
Yeah.
and Erica. Thank you. I really want to thank you for putting a citywide lens onto really what has been a international, symbol of flooding in a major city. We're talking about the major Deegan underwater, and this really had a connection to waterways in our area. But we had a meeting in September where we discussed, enlisted the community to come out and tell us just how we had been overwhelmed. They had been flooding on the Deegan and just flooding everywhere, as I'm sure you know. So we did ask city officials to come back and talk about some responses and plans now for flood mitigation. And hopefully we'll hear about some fantastic new investments in things like green infrastructure. But we have a ton of ideas. I've spoken to Erica about our committee's quick read of the documents from our last meeting in October. So we really wanted to give you the floor to present, and then we'll ask lots of nice questions that we hope will be helpful and include us. But we do really feel that this merits a kind of citywide focus along with other areas, as most famously in Queens, And we're really grateful you're putting your attention on this.
Of course, thanks so much for having us. I also want to recognize that I think we're also joined today by John Wong, who is the Director of Operations at New York State DOT.
Oh,
So we've got a good group today, and really happy to speak with you all about citywide plans for stormwater resiliency. So if you're ready, I can start we have a presentation prepared.
please do. Yes, you should be allowed to share your screen without me giving you any host. Mr. Wong, I didn't know you were going to make it, so I'm really happy to meet you and so happy you can make it. Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to be invited. I think I joined in the September meeting that you had. So again,
Okay.
So good to see everyone again.
Okay, that one I missed. Yep. And thank you for coming to that one too. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so again, thank you all for having us. We are glad to be here today to talk stormwater resiliency in New York and the many ways that the city is preparing itself for the future, especially in a post-IDA context. So I was asked whenever we spoke, Robert and I, just to go into a little bit on how rainfall events are anticipated to change in the future due to climate change. So flooding in New York City is caused by three main factors: heavy rainfall coming from the sky, obviously, groundwater coming up from below, and sea level rise coming in from the coast. All of these things can exacerbate different flooding conditions. And we know that floods are becoming more frequent and more intense. So New York City has a very close relationship with the scientific community through the New York City Panel on Climate Change. And we know that the predictions on these flooding conditions are all in consensus that these conditions are going to be more extreme in the future, happen with a more frequent pace. And we've already seen some of that change actually happen since we began recording this type of data. So we have to prepare for climate change, and not only from a single hazard perspective. Many folks might think of sea level rise or coastal storms being like the top of mind thing when you think of climate change. But as we recently saw, there's a lot of different ways that extreme weather can impact the city. So we need to be considering coastal storms, sea level rise, increased temperature, and increasing precipitation when we're planning for the future. And specifically on precipitation, the best available projections that we have for our region indicates there could be up to 1.5 times more rainy days that are greater than 1 inch by the 2080s. So we do anticipate that this climate hazard is going to become more intense in the future. And we also know that flooding can occur in non-coastal areas. So that's a big takeaway that we've been studying is the challenges with extreme rain and preparing for flooding in conditions where maybe we haven't seen flooding in the past. At the Mayor's Office of Climate Resiliency, we are also striving to make these projections public and accessible. We have prepared a variety of different public products that people can use to understand their risk. For sea level rise and coastal storms, we have obviously the FEMA flood maps, which I think are pretty familiar. We also have a flood hazard mapper where you can look at your future risk for coastal flooding. For extreme heat, we've mapped the areas of the city that are most vulnerable to increasing heat in the future by community district and by neighborhood tabulation area through the heat vulnerability index. And so the next climate hazard to be made public and accessible is extreme rain. And over the past 3 or so years, we've been studying in partnership with DEP and emergency management and a variety of other city agencies how extreme rainfall is going to impact the city, and how right now this year has put out public maps about stormwater related flooding. We've been preparing for extreme rain and for the impacts of precipitation for a while, and DEP is a global and national leader in investments in green infrastructure. So they invest millions of dollars every year to update the drainage system, has been extremely expansive in the application of green infrastructure. and are piloting these concepts called Cloudburst, which we'll get into a little bit more, but that include these flooding by design strategies to reduce the strain on the sewer system. These are all concepts that we're looking at citywide and are going to be considered like over large areas of the city. However, it's when we're thinking about any of these very extreme conditions, it's essential to understand that with any of these extreme weather events that are going to be limited engineering solutions to solve for a significant and a very, very large type of event, but we do need to be taking these steps in order to continue to protect New Yorkers. So everyone on the call today was extremely familiar with the impacts of Hurricane Ida in New York. We saw a tragic loss of life, mainly from folks living in basement apartments and majority immigrant Asian and South Asian communities, shattering our rainfall records from as long as we've been recording rainfall. So it certainly was an indication of how this could impact the city and how we need to be preparing for these extreme conditions. So to start a little bit on the city's planning, I want to reference that we put out in May of this year, the first stormwater resiliency plan for the city. From this report, as we kind of have gone through, we've taken away that precipitation events are definitely intensifying and are predicted to intensify in the city. Extreme rain can cause flooding in inland areas away from the coast, and it's extremely challenging to predict and can occur quite suddenly. So this plan outlined goals and initiatives in 4 major categories to prepare New York City for both like the short-term emergency management related improvements that we could make, and the longer term, thinking about bigger infrastructure investments that we also are moving towards as a city. After Ida, we took a very close look at a lot of those initiatives again and recommitted ourselves as a city to address a variety of different goals. So in September, the mayor convened the Extreme Weather Task Force right after the storm, brought together representatives, leaders, subject matter experts from all these different agencies across the city and across different government partners as well in the state and federal governments, and put together this list of commitments to address infrastructure and buildings, residences and businesses, and science and data collection to improve our understanding and response to extreme rain. So this really builds upon, I think, the work that we have been doing in the Stormwater Resiliency Plan earlier this year, as well as added a whole bunch of new initiatives that from lessons learned that we received from the storm and other initiatives that we had been pushing as well. So just a couple of notes on the Stormwater Resiliency Plan. I think it's helpful to have this as kind of a basis. These 4 goals that we had here kind of alluded to were in a variety of different categories. But the thing to kind of note is that we did provide a new mapping resource to the public. You maybe have seen this before, but just in case you haven't, there are 2 maps that were published showing the risk to extreme rainfall under future conditions. So we published a moderate stormwater flood map and an extreme stormwater flood map. Both of these are available on newyorkcity.gov/resiliency. Both of these scenarios include future sea level rise projections. So what that's going to mean is that you could see here these small orange areas. Maybe it's a little bit small, but I can show you the maps a little later if it's helpful. These orange areas indicate sea level rise, which could prevent the sewers from draining properly. Therefore, it could result potentially in some additional flooding in the inland areas or in areas where are low-lying or have lower green space. So these maps can show a potential risk to extreme rain and are intended to help inform New Yorkers of their risk and also to help the city plan for the future as well. And so next, I'll dive a little bit deeper into the new normal report, which again was published after Ida. Important to note is that this came with significant funding and commitments. So there was a commitment to $2.5 billion on stormwater related capital projects, and another $25 million on programming, research, and development of projects to protect New Yorkers from extreme rain. We're also very aggressively going after state and federal funding, especially with some of the new infrastructure spending that we've seen come through, to strengthen this work and to make sure that we're able to apply it comprehensively. So I'll go through just a couple of the different sections to give kind of a sense of what you can expect from the report at a city level. To start off with infrastructure, these are pretty progressive investments in this report, particularly related to Cloudburst neighborhoods. So I'm going to let Alan speak more to that in a couple of slides, but it's this interesting idea that I think we'll see come up again and again when we talk about stormwater more broadly, is using open space as a way to temporarily store additional stormwater in a way that can also be used as recreational spaces, public open space in the normal conditions when it's not raining. Certainly it's a kind of radical concept from maybe the traditional stormwater management, where it's like take the water away as quickly as possible, get it to treatment, push it to wherever it needs to go. But this is really a way to think about how do you get the co-benefits of these types of strategies, and how can we think about the extreme conditions, but also the everyday. Certainly a lot of focus on Cloudburst. We've secured funding for the first 4 Cloudburst neighborhoods and are going to pursue funding for an additional 6. We also have committed to implementing the East Harlem Cloudburst Resiliency Project and assessing a new drainage standard for a sewer system where it's feasible to do so. On nature-based solutions, this is a lot of expansion on the work that DEP has been doing with green infrastructure. So expanding NYCHA's green infrastructure program to some additional sites, adding stormwater infrastructure to playgrounds, adding more stormwater infrastructure to parks. Very excited to make progress on daylighting Tibbetts Brook in the Bronx and implementing projects through the New York City Wetlands Management Framework. We also have a focus specifically on buildings and how New Yorkers can protect themselves and their property from extreme rainfall. This comes along with additional study on the impacts of sea level rise and extreme weather on the housing stock, taking a look at the building codes, so looking into the building electrical and plumbing codes to see if there are ways that we can address intense precipitation, improve the way that buildings are designed from the very start. There's also a study underway citywide on backwater valves to inform a future installation program. And there's a new task force that's specifically looking at social infrastructure. So thinking about libraries or senior centers, how can we make sure that those very important congregate like community spaces are also resilient and can continue to provide services under a variety of different conditions. Along with the housing, we have specific initiatives focused to residences and businesses. So expanding the Flood Help New York, which is a resource that helps New Yorkers understand if they are interested in buying flood insurance, how can they do so? Is it appropriate for them? What's the process? They're restarting the building audits and operational trainings for multifamily buildings, and expanding the small business grant, emergency grant fund to make sure that small businesses are able to prepare themselves. Finally here, our final section of the report is on our understanding and really making sure that we are improving our understanding, not just related to Ida, like that was certainly an extreme event, and there's many things to learn from the storm that we experienced, as well as the storms from Henri and Elsa that we had earlier in the summer. But we want to make sure that we are preparing for the future and not just being reactive to a single event. So this kind of comes along with expanding our flood sensor network, which is getting real-time data and understanding of where different streets potentially could be flooded and what the depth would be of that flooding. We are understanding the combined risks of these events. So say we have a coastal storm and groundwater rise and a extreme rainfall event. How do all of those different hazards kind of play into each other and potentially impact one another so that we can better plan? We are understanding the future projections of extreme rain in a way that we can also incorporate into our design standards. So translating these into things that engineers and architects can use. And also developing coastal flood vulnerability index, which is going to be considering the coastal flood vulnerability along with social vulnerability factors. There is a ton going on in this space, and it's certainly not only at the local level. So we are also doing significant advocacy at the state and federal level, again, kind of thinking about the future with the Environmental Bond Act at the state, thinking about the infrastructure bill that was recently passed. We are hoping to expand the disaster relief, including potential funding for voluntary buyouts, reforming the National Flood Insurance Program, and reforming the BRIC funding so that we can better plan for and not just be only reactive to these extreme weather events. So that's a little bit of a taste, I guess, of things that are in the report. I am going to pass to Alan, I think, to speak on one of the more innovative ones that we kind of talked about with Cloudburst Planning. And again, I think it'll be interesting to this group specifically to hear about the ways that the city is approaching stormwater and kind of using open space as well.
Great, thanks, Erica. If you go to the next slide, we've been talking a lot about this idea of cloudburst management, but what do we mean? This is the idea, as Erica has mentioned already, about using open space to temporarily allow water to collect. It's going to happen, as we know. Regardless, there's a certain design storm to which the sewers are designed. There are technical and cost limits to upgrading the sewers, and the sewers continue to function beyond the storm for which they're designed. They're continuing to drain the streets and allow water to get back out of the streets after the intensity has subsided. However, there is a period of time when there will be flooding in streets and open space. And this idea of cloudburst management is that we're more actively planning for that. So right now, where we have a passive approach in that it floods where it floods, we have maps to indicate now where that is happening. Can we divert some of this water or keep the water out of the low-lying areas to reduce the level of flooding? We can't eliminate all flooding in all scenarios, but we can potentially buy down some of our risk and work with what we have with streets and open space to reduce flooding to a certain extent. And then, of course, there will always, again, be a storm that can exceed the level to which you design both the sewer system and our cloudburst features. So we always have to consider how areas at risk can implement protective measures, as Erica has described. Next slide, please, Erica. So here's an example. We've looked beyond the United States for examples because other cities across the world experienced events like we had this past summer years ago. So Copenhagen is really one of the best examples in that they had a what they called a Cloudburst event, which is really actually how we started using the word in 2011, where they got 6 inches of rain in 2 hours. And Copenhagen's a city that's used to light drizzle and doesn't get the types of thunderstorms and nor'easters and hurricanes that we get. So just for perspective, Central Park recorded just over 3 inches in 1 hour. This was 6 inches of rain in 2 hours. So it was a really significant event. And the response was what we're talking about now, which is cloudburst management. which shares a lot of similarities with our green infrastructure program, but some pretty notable differences in terms of how these systems are designed and also the conditions that you need in order to implement them. We have already, when we design green infrastructure, we have to take into account high bedrock levels, high groundwater, and other land features of the landscape and the geology. And so this is a revised approach where we can take into account some of these same factors, but we have to revisit how we plan these types of systems using this type of approach. It's essentially a rain garden in this example, which can flood during an extreme rain event. And another key difference is that the local drainage, so the downspouts and other drainage that would otherwise go straight into a sewer has been diverted so that it's all collecting in this area. So it's a neighborhood level approach to Cloudburst management. On the next slide, you'll see another example from Rotterdam. This is their so-called water square. And this is just to show that it doesn't necessarily have to be a garden, a rain garden. There's opportunities using what we call hardscape features, recreational areas like a basketball court. And this has this very similar function than the project in Copenhagen, which can flood to the top essentially during an extreme rain event. Next slide, please. So we recognize that while Sandy was a coastal event, that New York City could still experience extreme rain events, which is why we developed the Stormwater Resiliency Plan and maps. And we've also been working since 2015 to pilot this approach, which we're looking to scale up now. Following the events we just saw, we recognize that the need is more urgent than we had perhaps understood. So the pilot project that is currently finalizing design is Nycha's South Jamaica houses. This is leveraging our green infrastructure program and partnership with Nycha, but we're essentially supersizing the green infrastructure. So instead of letting, or in addition to, I should say, letting stormwater infiltrate into the ground, we're creating spaces that can flood, and we're connecting them to each other so that when one part of the system is full, another part fills, and so on. And on the next slide, you'll see a rendering of what we're planning to do. Or sorry, before we get there, we've been sure to engage the residents at South Jamaica houses in how we do this. This is space that is actively used. We want to enhance it, and we wanted to understand when we were planning this project, is this idea acceptable? And on the next slide, I think we show an example of one of the exercises we did with the community. And that was to present two options. One, this sunken basketball court that can temporarily flood during an extreme rain event, and one without that. And both have underground storage. So the underground storage fills up first. And blue stickers indicated the alternative that the residents liked, and red, less favorable. And pretty overwhelmingly, the residents selected the basketball court that has this additional seating around it and can temporarily flood and help alleviate some of the flooding in the community. Next slide, please. So a couple of visuals showing what this will look like. There's two grassy areas, pretty simple grassy areas that are sunken, and the basketball court, as I already mentioned. And on the next slide just shows what it will look like with some controlled flooding. Again, and I say controlled flooding because there's a limit to which these spaces can actually fill with water. There's outlets such that they can't fill beyond a certain level. And one more slide is just a close-up, I believe. Oh, sorry, the drainage pipes, showing how the on-site drainage, which is typically just diverted directly into the, or not diverted, but rather channeled directly to the sewer system, is going to be diverted to these spaces where they can temporarily flood. And if you follow from left to right, once one part fills up, the next part fills up, and eventually the basketball court fills up. Again, below the basketball court fills up, and it's only at the very last stage that if the rain event is heavy enough and everything else is a capacity, that the basketball court itself, it becomes filled with water. Next slide, please. So just a close up. We're working with the community right now on finalizing the design, as I mentioned, choosing the painting and other amenities that'll be featured. And we were lucky to receive funding from the local councilwoman to implement new lighting and benches, so make this a more holistic improvement for the community. Next slide. And just a couple more, one more example really. Erica mentioned the East Harlem Resiliency project, and it's a very similar project to the one that I just showed you. We're again working with New York City Housing Authority. This time we've received funding from FEMA for a feasibility study, and we hope to receive additional funding from FEMA to help implement this project, which could hopefully set a precedent for future funding, federal funding. Next slide, please. This time around, I'm not going to say much more about this project because it's early in the process, but we have the added advantage of the citywide flood maps. So now we can look to those maps to see which areas are flooding nearby. Of course, we can also use 311 and other local information. We went out to the community and literally knocked on doors, checked out, talked to store owners to see what they were observing. And we can look to the space in the community to see what we can put below ground, and if there are areas that can flood safely while adding amenities to the community. So the next step in this process will be to move into design and community engagement like we did at South Jamaica Houses. I think that might have been my last slide, Erica. Yes, so finally, Erica mentioned that the maps are available at this link. And likewise with the two plans, the Stormwater Resiliency Plan and the New Normal Report.
Excellent. Alan and Erica, thank you very much. I'm going to let our committee members ask some questions about what they've heard. So Rob, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
You're on mute.
Rob, you're muted.
That's the best way. You don't have to listen to me go on and on. With the sunken basketball option, it seems like it will be effective for pooling water in an extreme event. But my concern would be, particularly in a housing project, that it's kind of like an attractive nuisance in that how, can the community plan to not have children walk off into it? If it's a place that children normally go unescorted, and it's a rain event and it stops raining and people say, oh, good, the kid can go outside now, they could walk into a swimming pool. And, that is a negative to it in terms of, a child could drown in a flood anyway, but it's just that would be terrible, that something that's supposed to do good could actually do harm. And I don't know that there's a reasonable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a really, we're planning for that to the extent possible. We're trying to balance this dynamic where Nycha wants to remove fences on their properties and not have fencing everywhere, but also have some strategic barriers, fences essentially, so that we can avoid the risk, what you're describing, of young children just stumbling into that space, and also creating the ability to lock or a gate, to shut a gate. So we are incorporating that into this project. We don't want to have it completely fenced in. So there will, if you try hard enough, there will be places to get in. But we're trying as much as possible to reduce the risk, while balancing, Nycha's concerns about having fencing everywhere.
Yeah, because children will be children. I was at my son's swimming pool one day, and his cousin came, and his children got out while they were getting the stuff out of the car, and the two boys came running over, and my son said, "Can you guys swim?" And I said, "Sure." And the younger one just went in and went straight down. My son jumped in with his clothes on. It was like before the parents could get in. So children will do what children do.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ron.
Yeah, and
Next
we're also
question
not.
Yeah, I think we handled that. I just want to go to Deb Travis, another question. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It was really, really helpful. Back in September, we had a joint traffic and transportation ENS meeting specifically about the Major Deegan and the flooding that happened there. So when I was reading through the kind of the post-Ida city response, I was expecting to see a lot more about the Deegan, just simply because of it's such a central part of both recovering from a major hurricane, major stormwater event, just getting supplies into the city, like generators after Sandy, and just getting as an evacuation route out. So it seems like it is essential to keep it free of floodwater. So when the city is thinking about the Deegan and kind of going forward and planning, positioning it within this Cloudburst, within these other kinds of, within the Tibbetts Brook project, what are the mitigating programs that you're considering applying to the Deegan corridor? It seems so perfectly situated, both because you have the Tibbetts daylighting on one side, and because if you look, I can pull up the stormwater maps that you were referring to, that half of our flooding in this community board is the Deegan corridor. And it's coming, part of it is coming from the lake. And so the Tibbetts daylighting will be enormously helpful, but part of it is also coming from Westchester, applying pressure to Tibbetts Brook, and coming down from Kingsbridge Heights. And there's it's all public park between that stormwater coming down in the Deegan. So I just say that all as a way of kind of positioning it, that it seems like we're very uniquely well situated to have public dollars going into the parks along Bailey Avenue that are just east of the Deegan, and to kind of to add to the benefits of Tibbetts Brook daylighting. So can you just speak to that?
Sure, I guess I maybe have some citywide thoughts, but before we get into it, wanted to see if State DOT had any thoughts specifically on the Deegan to start us off.
We don't have anything specifically to the Major Deegan. I think anything that we do as a state agency on the Major Deegan or any other arterial in the city, for this to address the issues that you talked about today, the presentation was excellent. It really has to be a citywide, solution. It has to be partnered, city, state, everyone, all the agencies have to be partnered together. So I don't have any specific remedies. The only thing I can say is that yes, and anything that we have to do, it has to be collaborative with all the city agencies and state agencies.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I know that the state DOT works really closely with our New York City emergency management. So in the event of a storm event, which I know is not really necessarily what we're talking about, I do know that those entities coordinate very closely, especially for things like the Deegan, which I know that is a critical route. I think the city is, in terms of like cloudburst planning, just kind of wrapping our heads around where the areas are of particular vulnerability, and they're considering things such as the New York City stormwater flood maps and the future conditions of rainfall that we anticipate seeing, as well as things like social factors, areas of the city that might be particularly vulnerable, and also where there's potential opportunity for capital projects. So I think we are really taking a very broad look, and this area will definitely be one of those. I think you're right. There are some aspects of this area that are particularly potentially have a big opportunity, but I think we're still kind of like wrapping our heads around where the actual projects will end up being.
Yeah, I also think it's worth pointing out that in Community Board 8, people forget that we do have environmental justice zones, but this is in one of them, that whole Bailey corridor. So.
Yeah, Erica and Alan, we're here to really advocate for this as a vulnerable neighborhood with high flood risk. And in the second half of our presentation on this, everybody, we're going to talk about the mapping problem. At our October meeting, it was obvious, Erica and Alan, when we looked at the map, it was obvious that we were had under reports of 311 flooding. I don't know if you know about the sewer piping of the Tibbetts Brook down Broadway, which has been a chronic problem, as well as having a water body that literally overflows its gasket and goes down the Deegan. So that's what we're here. And I did want to talk about a couple of things. What role do you have, and then I'll get to other questions. What role do you have in resource allocation for, let's say, traditional budgeting? Because we may need another kind of storm sewer, an upgrade. We may want increased sewer capacity. We may think about, I don't know if sensors are a city buy or whether they're a public-private partnership. We may want sensors. And we may want, most importantly, right-of-way GI. And so when you're doing this planning, does it have an ability to, any impact on the budget? How do we go about getting these investments and raising ourselves to the top of the list for responses, structural responses to flooding? Because it's going to happen again. And we're going to look back at this and we're going to say, see, we told you. So we just want to know first of all, we know mapping will put us on the map literally or on the list, but we really want to be as clear and as aggressive as we need to be about resource allocation.
Yeah, well, I think the demo that I think Effie is going to go through on 311 calls and kind of getting the word out about that is one way. You know, hearing from community boards is another way that we do understand like community feedback. And I think in terms of like the socially vulnerable neighborhoods and the environmental justice neighborhoods and the areas of the city that have historically not been invested in, that's something that is absolutely now become a huge driver of investment. And so I'm, you know, you've raised in your own district these areas that have maybe not received city funding in the past, and how it's created chronic issues. And I think we are now deepening our understanding of those. We have the New York City Environmental Justice for All report coming out. And also, as you may have seen, New York City has recently designated environmental justice areas by census tract.
Sure, we
like
responded. We have comment on that. We're going to share it with you. We
I'm sure. Thank you. So I am, I think that like having that be a driver of investment is one really important way that the city needs to change the way that it does business. So I guess those would be the things that come to my mind first.
Okay. Thanks. There are two hands up, David, and then Camelia.
Yes, thank you. I find the presentation about allowing those sort of recreational spaces like basketball courts and like the Singapore Park areas, allowing them to flood 2 or 3 times every 5 or 10 years, which is probably in the range of your expectation of major floods. I think that's manageable and tolerable. but you mentioned traffic spaces. I'm trying to understand what they would be, and if it's what I think it is, how could it be acceptable for more than 2 hours?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the primary function of the traffic spaces, or considering traffic spaces in this mix, is actually, can it be designed, or you know, how do we consider the way that streets convey the flow of runoff above ground into the spaces where it can be safely stored? So that's more the function of the streets in that mix, is in connection with the storage. So you can do a certain amount where appropriate and feasible to slow runoff through, I'll call them traditional methods, because we've had them, you know, for some time now, like rain gardens. You know, again, there's challenges with that, with bedrock and other issues and space. So using streets to maximize, you know, how much we can divert, and then once you're beyond that point, can you take the runoff from the streets and put it primarily below ground first, like in a storage tank, and then again, in the example that I mentioned, above ground. Copenhagen was looking at other alternatives where, for example, instead of the crown in the middle, you would have the crown, an inverted crown, what they called, and that would allow water to kind of flow down the middle, and again, you know, to a space where it can be safely stored. They haven't honestly made much progress with that. I think there's issues from, you know, DOT's perspective with taking that approach, but we'll be considering, you know, what our options are moving forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right, Camelia.
Yes, hi. First to say hello to both Anunzi, because this year I'm only a guest. I'm not a member of the committee, but as you can see,
Yeah, we haven't
I'm
forgotten
following.
that, Camelia. We haven't forgotten that.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Just to share with the two speakers, I happen to work in East Bronx in Morris Park, and I interact with Effie in the context of the district cabinet there. I mean, and their vulnerability there is so much less in my perception compared to CB8 and the Broadway corridor, yet that area somehow struck the lottery in terms of this type of measures. We have an abundance of rain gardens. Thank you, DEP, for that. We have right now happening one of these projects. Effie, please correct me if I'm wrong. Under the Matthew Mulliner playground, actually in the basketball area, as we speak, there are excavators and equipment that is building one of these underground, under the baseball ground reservoir tank. I mean, it's amazing, and yet I come back here in Community Board 8, where we have years of chronic flooding along the Broadway corridor affecting businesses. I mean, documented with pictures, with water, you know, up to your waist in their basements. We have so much in the Marble Hill area, which is an environmental justice area, issues. We have 11 Nycha buildings there in a large complex where their basements are covered with mold, and it's a perennial. No, not perennial is not the issue, the word. It's a chronic issue for the residents there. Yet we have the Bailey playground, which is along Broadway. This would be a perfect location to start such a project under the baseball courts. The Nycha buildings in Marble Hill, again, environmental justice area would be, and they have basketball courts and recreational playgrounds for the children. Those would be a perfect area again for placement of such projects. So just to flag, I mean, again, we have the Tibet's project, which we do appreciate, but God knows how long it was going to take. It will take for the city to negotiate pricing and acquisition of land and all that story. So I guess my main point right here is to advocate for Community Board 8 to be the site of future pilot projects of along these lines, because we do have the need. It's been documented for years and years and years of flooding. The city has spent so much money creating a main that is fairly new, but I understand it's by far not sufficient capacity to accommodate all this water. And we have the Bailey playground. We have a bunch of playgrounds in the Van Cortlandt Park area, Marble Hill Environmental Justice area, 11 Nycha buildings. I mean, the scope is right there, and I would say it's burning, but it's not burning. Obviously, it's just water up to your waist. I mean, along the Deegan, one more proof, is there needed to show vulnerability along the Broadway and Deegan corridor? So I guess these were the points I wanted to make. I don't know how decisions were made in the past. It's clear we didn't experience events at this level of extreme impact. But again, I do see an imbalance. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I had my basement in Morris Park at the office flooded over the course of 2 hours up to my waist, and then the water receded right away. It's quite amazing actually to see the images on camera, and all the businesses got flooded, but not to the extent that the Broadway has been suffering for years and years and years. So just kind of wanted to make that comment, and if there's anything again as far as lobbying for funding from the local electeds or whatever the community board aid could do, just please let us know. We would love to support you in having our district part of this initiative. So just wanted to say this, and thank you very much.
Thank you. We are a poster child. We are chronic flooding, chronic inland flooding, structural flooding. And we know about daylighting, but there's a ton of things you could do here. And we are going to be partners in advocating, and we're not going to let this just pass by because this is citywide and we got killed. We got just slammed. We can't let this keep going. So we're going to have to advocate. We're going to need resources. Jody, and then I just want to close because we have a really participatory part of our meeting about how we get more resources for flooding and climate change. Jody?
Hey, didn't Karen have her hand up before me?
No, I didn't see Karen. Oh, there, Karen. What the hell?
Yeah, Karen said.
Okay. Karen, go ahead.
So all I'd like to say is, because we have the high rock and high water table, all of these cloudburst things are not going to work for us. What we need is green infrastructure. We need to go back to the green infrastructure, and we don't have to go deep. We can go wide. We got plenty of places to do it. We just need the money and we need the programming. And we've been asking for this for a long, long time. If you stay till the end of the next presentation, you'll see that there is plenty of places to do this. We could design it for you if you can't figure it out. But this committee has been working on this for years. I think we started doing this stuff in the 2013, 2015.
2014.
And we had Phoebe working on it from the AmeriCorps group, and we have identified the high flow areas that are just naturally there. I have maps from every place that you don't need to look at 311 complaints. I mean, they're good. I'm not saying 311 is not good, but you don't need to look at the 311 complaints. You just have to follow the old maps of Tibbetts Brook. And every place where Tibbetts Brook used to be and people built on it, now it's flooding. So we need to look at this from a scientific point of view. There's no question about it. It's just a matter of facts. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Jody?
What Karen said. So yeah, the Tibbetts Brook has been not just the daylighting idea of the new course that they're putting on, but the old zigzaggy course, because I was at the Enchanted Garden at the JFK High School campus, and I saw them digging out a trench through the garden to put a pipe in to pipe the water that is old Tibbetts Brook into the sewer because it had flooded. So so two things is, rather than copying a ball court idea and using our ball courts, there are, as Karen said, there are plenty of places where we can put green infrastructure, and especially in the EJ areas, a rain garden is beautiful landscaping to people who don't know what its function is. So adding that native plants and beauty that also has a mitigation function is really important. And then the second thing that we haven't talked about, which we've stamped our feet about on this committee when I served on it decades ago, and still now, is development. There's more concrete and asphalt coming into this community than ever before. We're losing a lot of the soil that soaks up the water. So the mayor's office can take a more holistic approach and also look at pervious versus impervious. And I know we've looked at some land maps and started to see the differences and the changes. That's directing the water into places that it shouldn't be. And I don't think that the maps are projecting potential development, which is a big issue for us. It's why the
Interesting
water's
variable.
going faster. So, and thank you, Erica and Alan. I did see your whole swim presentation and I asked the hard question at the end. So, so I'm glad to see you in my own neighborhood now. So thank you.
Thank you. Erica and Alan, I just wanted to wind up, and then we're going to move on to the reporting aspect, everybody, with summarizing the longstanding demand for green infrastructure here, in addition to Tibbetts Brook, because in particular, Kingsbridge Heights, you'll see, has a topographical relationship to the Deegan, which makes it a speedway. I'd also want to say that for water, that is, down into the basin. I'd also want to say that we go through a lot. There's been a lot of overbuilding, especially in Kingsbridge Heights and throughout now on Broadway, Upper Broadway. And we continue to get assurances that there's sufficient sewer capacity. And it's obvious that anything on Broadway does not have sufficient sewer capacity. So I know that's one of the responses. I believe it's in response 3. The new normal report is actually a great checklist, everybody, to see the things you want to happen. And that's going to be really helpful for our budgeting. Okay. But I just wanted to tell you about and you've heard this from other community boards, I'm sure, our suspicion about sewer capacity and the approval that development continues to get in an era of climate change. And I'm sure DEP is working on different promulgation of sewer capacity rules, or they should be. I'm sure they are, but that's definitely something that we've been talking about. So sewer capacity is a huge thing. And then also we were looking at the report, and there was it was very interagency, but I hope you realize the benefit of regular community engagement, which I'm sure you do. And we were wondering if there's a space in the reporting for both recognizing communities as stakeholders, okay, contributing to reports, because we are the vulnerable parties, but we're also the legal eagles that take iPhone photos and report in. So I would like to know about how community members, in addition to 311, can actually contribute to the documentation. And what should we be doing with photos? Because we get these, and we really feel like we're eyes and ears, and you might as well crowdsource and use us. So how can we be involved as stakeholders, and what should we do with our iPhone photos?
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you to everyone who, spoke and made very, very true and poignant statements today too. I know that this group has been working for a long time on these issues, and I really appreciate hearing the history of this in this neighborhood and the opportunities that you guys are seeing. I think, in terms of some of the community engagement, there is, I know, especially after Ida, the community affairs unit out of the New York City Office of Emergency Management has different kind of like assigned community groups that actually were soliciting pictures from folks. So I think they're still compiling that and has been putting it into kind of overall damage assessment. So I can connect you with the right person there to be able to submit some photos and also get it into like other cities' documentation of the impacts of Ida.
Oh, that
That
would be
also could be
excellent.
used like for the, in future events as well to know the right point of contact.
Yeah, well, I think you need to understand the literally the environment, the topography of what we're dealing with here, and the photos will help, and of course, site visits all the time. So we really want to continue the working relationship and put this in your planning. Now I'd like to, I want to thank you both and Alan, and hope you can hang on a little bit. So we're very cognizant of the need for 311 calls. So for that reason, Effie Artizoni from DEP wanted to walk us through with Karen. Karen, you're going to share the screen for the 311 website. We really need to get our map darkened on the, we saw the new normal map and we didn't really feel that it reflected our flooding risk. So we're going to need a real campaign to make sure people understand how to use 311. And Effie, I am really happy to report that the website is a fantastic instrument, better than the phone. Okay, and I guess that's a really important thing to understand. I didn't even ever think of using a website for 311 for some reason, because it's a phone number. I thought to use a phone, but there's a lot here. So Effie, would you like to walk us through how we can participate?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Yes, you have the option of calling into 311. The operators there, they are sensitive to the words that you use to report your complaint. So there are specific words, and depending on what you say, they will route it to the appropriate agency, okay? Whereas 311 online, you're more in control. You can peruse and see what exactly is your complaint and log it in yourself. Either way, we always recommend anybody who has any city issue or city inquiry calls 311 and places the proper complaint that they have to. So usually I just go on www.nyc.gov/311, or you could do it the way you want to do it, Karen, right now. All agencies get to know our problematic locations with these complaints that are logged in through 311. So if you're reporting flooding, so here's another thing. When I said before, when you call 311, the operator will look at keywords that you use. What are you experiencing? And when you're logging your complaint in with 311, it's important to know, what are you experiencing? Not what you think the solution to your problem is. You're reporting your complaint. So is it street flooding? Is it a clogged catch basin? Is it a sewer backup coming into your house? A sewer backup will be something internal, not external. Is it a water main break? So when you go into 311, if it's street flooding, you would get into here, street flooding. It gives you some options. So like I said before, highway flooding, street flooding, if you come further down, sewer backup, flood cleanup. There's a lot of different types of complaints. The ones that DP covers, for example, you could go into street flooding, which is the third one. Okay, and you would put in the description, what you're experiencing. In this case, is flooding in front of my house, as it notes, the date and time you observed it. There are some questions that we've added. For example, is it currently raining? When did the problem start? Is there debris over the catch basin grates? That's a common problem during the fall, when the leaves are coming down and they all get matted on top of the catch basins and the water does not flow into them. So we always encourage property owners, by the way, to sweep the leaves or debris off the top of the catch basins, just like we encourage you during the winter months when it snows to remove the snow from in front of the hydrants so they're accessible by the fire department. In addition, in this complaint, as you can see, it says you can add an attachment. So if you have a photo, you can attach that, or you can attach any other kind of file that you feel you should be attaching. This is, I guess you can hit next, Karen. We'll see what happens. So you would put in your address. You usually have to hit select address. If you hit select address, it will, you could type in your address and just get the proper location because 311 is a sensitive system. And you need to make sure you have the proper address on it. Certain complaints, you can get away with intersections, street leaks, things like that. You can put in an intersection, but if you're reporting like a basement flooding or a sewer backup, you need to put in an actual address, property address. And then you hit select address once you've determined that. And any other details, if it's near an intersection and you want to say it's more on Broadway instead of 231st, you would note that you give as much information as you can to make sure to ensure that our crews find the complaint.
I think we need to share this with our business community.
Absolutely. And if you need me to come out to any association that you may have, a merchants association or anything like that, please let me know. I will definitely make myself available. Yeah, and you would provide your information. Sometimes there are anonymous complaints made. With an anonymous complaint, if you want a call back, you're not going to get a call back. So, you know, if you would like to enclose your information, we always encourage that.
Thank you. Karen, could you go back to sewer backups?
Yes.
Erica and Ellen, you're still here, right?
You want me to choose sewer backups?
Yeah.
Flood
So,
cleanup.
Still here.
Okay.
Yep.
great. Because, you know, in a lot of ways, this was a surprise to me about the role of hills and rock in producing sewer backup. And you would think they would be, the valley, of course, would be the more vulnerable place. But I live on a hill. And what happened is that this unprecedented speed and intensity of the storm, the water, supercharged the sewer because of the extra velocity caused by a hill, right? And so as a result, I literally had a geyser coming up. So I want you to hear that because it had to do with, and no one is going to report. The co-ops do not report sewer backups. Effie, I've done a little survey of supers, large buildings, sewer backups from Ida. No one reports sewer backup because that is an index of sewer capacity, of sewer line capacity. And I just think this is one of the most underutilized reports out there. But for our
Doesn't look
MOT
like you can actually report it.
Oh, yes, you can. I mean, if you hit sewer backup, typically I just go into the, it says report a sewer backup in the middle of your page.
I see it.
there.
Okay.
Yeah. And a sewer backup, it's important to explain to people, you know, that's actual sewage coming into your house through your toilet or bathtub. We do come out, certain complaints, you will notice we have to respond to them more immediately than other complaints. For example, a clogged catch basin can be a couple of days, whereas the sewer backup will be a couple of hours. This is a health related issue. We do check the city sewer that tends to run in the middle of the street. We check the manhole. If it's down and running, that means there is no issue with the city sewer, then it's an internal condition. So it's important to report all these complaints when someone has them, and we will come out and assess the situation. If it's not on the city's end, then your building or you as the property owner should get a plumber to look and see, is there a clog or something like that on your service line or internal piping?
It seemed to be the storm because we have CSOs.
So let's just. Okay, go ahead.
Jody, have a question?
Yeah,
I just wanted to say that we want to finish the report. So you should get an email and then you get the service request number.
Yeah.
And then you
Thank you,
call the
Karen.
community board and give them that number. That's really important because that's a double check on the whole system.
Yeah, thank
Correct.
you, Karen. Thank you.
Okay.
and
Jody, did you have a question?
Just comment and question. So most 311 operators actually go through this same portal. They put in your keywords and they're looking
Yes.
through these same choices.
Yes.
So if you want to look through them ahead of time, you'll get to know the keywords. You can't,
Yes.
you have this catch basin is what they're looking for, you know,
Mhm.
not storm drain. So perusing through the things that are most common in 311 is super helpful. But Effie, I found a lot of things that you need a street address, and many places don't have street addresses in our neighborhood that have these kinds of problems, which we'll talk about in new business. But the other thing you mentioned about priority and response. So if somebody reports a sewer backup, like what's like a regular DEP response time? I know 311, if you ask them, you know, if you ask them how long, sometimes it's 4 days, 5 days. So what's a common response time for a sewer backup?
It's not supposed to be 4 or 5 days for a sewer backup. I would say it's 4 to 5 hours. It depends what the complaint is. So like I said, the clogged catch basin complaints, they're not considered such a priority like a sewer backup or a street leak or a water main break. Those are more emergency situations where we do come out and see what's going on. And it's important to get that 311 complaint number so you can follow up with the board and ask them at that point, okay, so when was DP out here? Maybe we didn't ring your doorbell, but it doesn't mean that we didn't go out and check the city sewer just to make sure it wasn't causing any issue.
And usually on the email, it will tell you what they're supposed to do. See here, it says 7 days, they're gonna respond. I
So
couldn't,
in this case,
couldn't
right,
find a DP one. Yeah, right.
yeah, that's
right.
fine. This is a dirty condition for a sidewalk, so that obviously went to DSNY. It usually tells you the time. In the mayor's management report as well, it notes city agency response times to complaints. Every year it's given out, and it gives an idea of what the response times are. But obviously you can always feel free and ask the board to contact me, or you can contact me and we can discuss that for each complaint. Yeah. But like I said, the types of complaints that DEP handles are street leaks, sewer backups, street flooding, basement flooding, among other things like air quality complaints, noise complaints, asbestos complaints, things of that nature.
And Effie, I did pull the 311 complaints. We've been complaining about 311 for a very long time. I filtered for sewer and went through the different flooding, and many of the sewer ones were closed in 45 minutes to an hour. So I kind of, we've had this issue with DOB, with DOT, with the Parks Department, where it seems like 311, NYPD, it seems like 311 is closing tickets to say there was no problem before when they send it to the agency, not when the agency actually responds. So
if that happens again, feel free to send it over immediately and just say, oh, I placed this complaint. Why was it closed out in less than an hour? It's obvious nobody came. Let me look into it. I do get complaints about 311. We do have, I think every agency has a 311 liaison with Do It. And we do bring these to their attention. Sometimes they even pull up the calls and listen in on what happened and how the complaint was logged. Sometimes the complaints by the operator not logged appropriately, or they may be sent to the wrong agency. But definitely feel free and let us know when you're having that issue. Like I said, 311 operators, they have a big turnaround rate. So they go according to keywords, you know? So if you don't say the right keyword, they may start questioning you and asking you something else so they can find out exactly what is your complaint. And so they can send it up to the appropriate agency.
Great. Rob Spalter, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. There's a question for you, Bob, and for Effie. Have you received Leslie Hogan's complaint, the testimony she gave at the land use meeting about the flooding on Broadway in North Riverdale? How whenever it is a heavy rain, like we had several times this year, that all the first floor apartments have over a foot of raw sewage backing up out of the toilets.
My goodness.
And that every manhole between 260th Street and Marshallou Avenue blew off, and DOT fixed it. They paved over them. They put them back and paved over the manholes in the middle of the street. So, you know, sometimes the city works in very strange and mysterious ways.
Rob, what was the locations again, Ms. Hogan?
I'm going to send you Leslie's testimony. Let's see. Because she's in two. She represents two buildings, 6485 and 6495 Broadway co-ops.
Okay.
And it goes from David Sheridan Plaza at Marshallou Avenue to 259th Street.
Okay, excellent.
And, you know, and she talks about we can't build any more buildings north of Marshallou Avenue, because that was one of the things that I was going to talk about earlier, is that the weather is getting more extreme, but the difference in the past 30 years is that the entire city is so much more paved over and so much more built up. And all these areas that had one-family homes or single-story buildings now have 10, 12-story buildings with so many more abilities for sewerage, you know, to go into the pipes at any given time. And it seems to never end, that every lot, even the unbuildable lots with giant rocks, they go in there and they take all of that out. So it's completely different. And then one other comment that I wanted to make before, when Alan mentioned one of the things that they can do to control water is crowning the roadway. That was one of the things that I had mentioned about K-Park Street going towards Palisades, that when the original street was there, it was probably crowned and the water was channeled towards those sidewalks that went out at a V. And it went right into where the storm drains are. When they repaved it, not only did they narrow it to make it a chute, but they made it flat and straight like a kid's sliding pond. You know what I mean? So that now the water goes straight at the building. So
the street was not repaved at all.
Water would go towards the sidewalk more. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, and I'll shut up.
When we get street flooding or ponding complaints, we like to come out and see what caused it. Was it the excessive rainfall that we experienced? Sometimes you have ponding conditions because you barely have any sidewalks or curbing, so the water just sits there. Sometimes the street is not pitched properly when there is a catch basin at the end of the block, but it's just not flowing into it. So there's a lot of reasons for ponding conditions, flooding conditions. And we do come out and inspect that and work with DOT in that as well.
Well, Broadway over there is extended from Yonkers, and it's downhill all the way from Yonkers. So it's one long chute, and all that water is coming from Yonkers. And, you know, there's nowhere for it to go. You know, there's no way to the few catch basins that are there can't possibly absorb that water. And because of all the 5 million gallons a day that goes to 30 million gallons a day when it rains in there, that's why the pressure is so high that the manholes blow off. But that won't happen if they pave over everything. That won't happen. Just the water will go high. It'll be 2 feet of sewerage in the first floor apartments, but the DOT will feel that they did a good job. They stopped the manhole covers from coming off. But anyway, you know, so this is not a ponding situation. It's a flood coming down like a river from Yonkers. And I don't know what can be done.
Well, it's definitely an area on our list now. Effie, we'll talk about this offline too about.
I'll send you Leslie's testimony. It should have been sent to you from the board. I know she sent it to the board, but I can't swear that they did the right thing and forwarded it to you.
Okay.
Bob, may I have a
Jody,
follow-up
do you have a
question?
comment on the the flooding in the 311
It's a
sheet?
follow-up question. So we did ask Erica and Alan about how can we send our photos, and not just photos, videos of the flooding and the water. But Effie, is that something that would be useful for DEP as well? That whatever we're going to send to them, that we send to you too? Because it's not just the flooding, but Bob mentioned, and it's not just Capoc Street because of the DOT concrete. We have rivers running down the roads that are going and overwhelming the sewer system. So are those kinds of, I mean, I've been out with my ruler, you know, taking pictures of how deep it is. Are those helpful to either Alan, Erica, or you, Effie?
When you're reporting them to 311, make sure when it gives you the option to put a photo or a video, put that in there as well, because that's evidence it's recorded there, right? Send them to Alan as well. Alan is with DEP, so you can always send them to them as well. They keep it in that regard. And if you feel it's an issue, you know, that you need to bring it to my attention, do that as well. Absolutely.
What actually, I'm not talking about a 311 complaint about flooding, because there's no way to complain about like literally in some of these storms, there's 2 to 3 feet of a river running along the side of the road down into the street.
Yes.
Sometimes it floods, sometimes it goes into the storm drain, and that's part of what is creating that intense pressure that was mentioned, that's blowing manhole covers and kicking sewer up. So are those pictures of where there's like the roadways have these rivers going down the side, are those useful at all?
If you feel it is useful, Jody, definitely send it over. I would never tell somebody, don't send me any, you know, any of your information or your pictures. Send it to all of us, you know, copy us and send it to us. Absolutely.
It's not a traditional flooding complaint having to do with a household or a basement. It's more of an environmental factor leading to sewer overflows. So it is something unique, and we have hills. I mean, that's really an important part of flooding in our area. So you've heard about our zeal for measuring floods, and it is a fact that our members of our committee have been out with rulers, because a lot of our members of our committee were part of something once called the Citizens Emergency Response Team. That I believe, Jody, you were a founding part of. And Karen mentioned high flow areas. And our committee took a very scientific approach to figuring out where to put interventions that could interrupt floods by looking at where there was these kinds of rivers going. These not flooding in front of a property, but rivers of water. So out of this came a great plan that was created from members of the committee, but also members of nonprofits that we knew through the Bronx Council of Environmental Quality. And we created a master plan for a neighborhood for creating green infrastructure in high flow areas. So Karen is going to talk about that. And Karen, you have your map for today. You can present anytime now. I hope that we're definitely going to pass this forward, and there's a little progress on some of it. Thank you, Karen.
Yes,
Go
can
ahead.
you see the map?
Yep.
Okay. So this is Sedgwick Avenue and goes down to Van Cortlandt Avenue, and this is Van Cortlandt Park. This is north over here. This is the Drone Park Reservoir. Here is Clinton High School. This is a little garden. Maybe it's still a garden, I don't know. This is what we call the Grove, which I'll get back to. All of these little features have different meanings. So these purple ones are Pollinator Gardens. These green areas are green roofs on some of the buildings. So now this is where the school, where's the school? This is where the school is. This is across the street where the stores are. And so they decided maybe they could put some green roofs over here. And so this is like set up so that you could capture different parts of, like this is a hill where the water's coming down. And obviously there you would want to put some green infrastructure because you can capture the water coming all the way down. And this is a plan for this little area, which is the middle of which is amalgamated, but it does have a school or 2 or 3, a library now probably, and it has a shopping area. And it has this area which we all call the Grove. Interestingly enough, we are going to put a green this is DEP property, and DEP has agreed to put a green infrastructure. I'm thinking it's like about here. Maybe it's here.
Karen, it's right on the corner. I think it's here.
Yeah, I'm afraid that this is a crosswalk, and that this drawing is not exactly right.
I think you're right.
It's
yeah.
someplace around here, and that would be a very beautiful place with the native plants that's going to go in. I think we're at like 95% of the drawings. Sometime in January, we expect to have a meeting with Amalgamated to talk to them about it. And we'll invite the committee. It can't be on the same day because the Amalgamated board meets the same time we meet, so we have to have a different day. And so these are just some ideas of how you take care of water. This obviously this this area is way up above and contributes to the runoff onto the Mage Deegan and also down this hill. And there's a staircase here. That staircase is also there. It also goes into the park. The water comes down so fast down this street because it goes from, I forget the number, from one level to the other, that it kind of rips around and turns around. There's some bunch of tree pits that have been like washed out just by the water. And that was before we had Ida. Who knows what happened when they had Ida. And so the idea is, this is a great idea. There was also a report that went with it, and that's the step streets. And what we thought that they would put a garden on the side of the step street so they could absorb the water besides having it have a run. Yes, and so they credited community board, they credited BCQ. We did it with the Riverkeeper and Soil and Water. And we'd like to do this with other people and other places in our neighborhood. I mean, this is only one side, but up here on this side, there's all this water coming down the hill over here, and we could use the same thing here. We have pictures of it. The water just comes like they were saying, it just comes running down Sedgwick Avenue. Wherever there's a hill, you're going to see a river on the roadway. So this is what we expect to see, the city looking at.
Yeah. So Erica and Alan, feel free. So this is an example of community-based planning that really does recognize this is 5-year. I think we started this in 15 based on measurements of water flow. And it is a great example of community-based planning that can be used to guide investments and interagency cooperation here. I wish it was a topography map to show that this is all important because of the elevation, because gravity is everywhere we're proposing. These are actually places that interrupt a flow of water caused by elevation, whether it's
I
down
think
Broadway.
I have a topography map here. This is the State of New York Environmental Conservation, and it's a map that does the it says topography. You can't really tell, but what you can tell is that this is what you call base flow elevation, which is 72 to 75 inches of sea level rise. And so here's Van Cortlandt Park. Amalgamated is here. No, here. Where's Amalgamated?
On the other side of Marshall.
Amalgamated is over here. So this is the area over here this whole area here could also be added to the plan very easily, and it would go down the hill. And it goes down the hill to this area here where it's flooding. This is the Major Deegan Expressway, which is completely in the base flow elevation of 72 to 75 inches sea level rise. And then it floods on Broadway, and then it goes over to the other areas where it was originally Tibbetts Brook. I mean, and I could show you, put on and off things. This is the wetlands in Van Cortlandt Park. If they weren't there, it would be 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And I guess I can do topography someplace.
Wasn't this called Watershed Plan? Karen, can you go back to what I think it said on the plan, the brochure? We do recognize this whole area as a watershed with unique ecological environmental characteristics. And it's a perfect description of how we really believe the urban space should be treated as a natural environment.
The Harlem Watershed Hilltop Green Infrastructure Neighborhood Concept Plan.
Yeah, that's kind of our take on planning and land use, is that urban environments should be treated as natural environments, and especially in areas of climate change, and make interventions that respect natural features and try to enhance their value. So you mentioned wetlands. There's never been a better time to invest in wetlands in Van Cortlandt Park. But Karen, this is fantastic. Just go back one more time so we could see the map of the installations. Were these proposed, Karen, or existing?
No, all of these are proposed.
Okay. Thanks.
We wanted to do more green roofs, but Amalgamated wasn't very happy about that idea. That's why we thought if we were going to do a green roof, we would go to the stores.
Right. Well, there was always the problem with the liens on the mortgage for the green roof program, which I think they've changed there. So we could definitely.
Well, they could have done a green roof. We didn't have to do green roof from the DEP. It could be just you do.
Yeah, I know, private. Yep.
You know, I mean, like, because it's not, a green roof is not really that expensive thing to do.
Yeah, Karen, I can jump in a little bit, like to put my co-op board president hat on for a second, or hat on for a second.
I didn't know you had another hat, Tiff.
He's the president of the board of the co-op board, yes.
So, well, and so when we were thinking about green roofs, I mean, one of the things that was just like made it seem like, okay, not a thing we could do today, which makes it always get pushed off, is that we always are addressing, there's always things we're fixing on the roof. And then we have local law 11, or what's called FIPS, cycle 9, all of the facade work that happens every 5 years. And so we have construction happening on the roof every 3 to 4 years. And so a green roof seemed like it was gonna always be problematic with that stuff. And so
I built a green roof on St. Simon's Stock, and it was because they had continuous flooding. They couldn't fix the old roof, and it was a flat roof, and it was a Catholic school, and once we did the green roof, it never flooded again. I mean, we did the green roof, we finished it in 2004, and it's still nothing came out, no flooding.
Because nothing ever gets below it, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, because what you do is when you build a green roof is you make a that like reservoir that they were talking about for the underneath the baseball field. You put that a little bit underneath the where you're going to put your soil. You can't do too much because you don't want to raise the roof like,
Well, you can't, because then you got to raise the parapet walls and the
right. So you put something there that will hold it and capture the water, but allow a little runoff like a weir that will, in case it overflows too much. But the plants will take care of mostly everything. Hardly anything runs off. The water just got absorbed by the plants. The kids loved it but you don't have to have it so that they actually do plants. You could put a continuous planting that's just up on the roof and, low, it never grows higher than a certain level. And you don't have to let people go there. I mean, it's kind of nice to go there though,
Yeah, I mean, is there a world though where, like, when a lot of these buildings with amalgamated and with Park Reservoir and Mutual, all of us have yards, have like pretty substantial like property because of the
Right, so you don't need to do it, right, you have.
well,
to
is there a world where because I think by code, we have to be connected to the sewer for our water drainage for our roofs. Is there a world, I feel like we had on one of the earlier Environment and Sanitation Committee meetings several years ago, homeowners were talking about how just diverting that water into tanks so that we can water the lawn, or we have community gardens. Like, is there a world where that's like an alternative instead of like, so that we could put solar on the roof and put, you know, and divert the water into our own?
Yeah, they have rain barrels. I mean, in the building, it's a big rain barrel. I just saw these other things where you could take the pipes and you could stretch the pipe to the garden area. And when it rained a certain amount, there's a pop-up thing that comes and will divert the water from the downspout. Like you could put a downspout diverter on the downspout. I mean, your downspout is inside the building, so I don't know how you could.
Or you just
Rob, you had a question?
run something outside, yeah.
Yeah, we have to work on that.
Another question from Rob. Was your hand up, Rob?
Sorry, I just forgot.
About the Hilltop project.
Right. But the reason why Amalgamated wasn't happy about the green roof is they didn't think it was going to be. They thought it would be too heavy when it snowed. But the roofs are built to hold 2 inches of snow, which is a lot of water.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do the whole roof. Actually, you could just do certain parts of it too.
Yeah. I mean, there's also like, I mean, you know, like every year we clean our roof, our tank, right? Our water tank, and we flood our roof with like 3 feet of water, you know, or 2 feet of water. So there's like practical things that are just part of the building maintenance that might just make it complicated.
Right.
I think there's a lot of water management to buildings that need to change too. And a lot of opportunities or programs that we've all heard they've been going on for about 10 or 15 years now. But there's a lot of opportunity to re-educate buildings and incentives, everything from rain barrels to other stuff you're talking about, Deb.
Yeah.
But Karen, this is a great thing. Alan, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, you know, well, this is great. First off, I would love to.
I'm glad you like it.
If you're able to share it with us and would like to circulate it. But just to build off of, you know, the point about buildings and incentives, you know, one thing I won't speak in detail to this because it's more in the realm of my colleagues, but we are looking to bring more people to the table when it comes to green infrastructure for private landowners, and have been, again, I won't speak to the details because it's not my realm of expertise, but have been revising that to make it more attractive, hopefully. But I think we need to get people to the table. We also, I like all the talk about water reuse. That is something we're also working on.
Yeah.
So
good to hear.
We have a grant program which is like the Green Infrastructure Program, or at least the older version of the Green Infrastructure Program. So it's more geared towards larger properties. But we're also we also just revised the water rates. So properties that reduce their potable water use or offset their potable water use and their wastewater discharge above a certain threshold are eligible for essentially 2 discounts. One that applies specifically to the water, the part of their water bill, and another one to the wastewater part of the bill. So a lot of those things are probably, you know, we're probably not getting the word out as much as we should, but I'd be happy to provide additional information about that.
Thanks. I really think it's a climate response. It definitely is.
We'll send you the link, and there's a report that goes with it.
Yeah. It's really a great example. We're very proud of it. And I do have to say that DEP is actually investing in this corner here. That's not a pilot, it's an investment. It's turning out really beautiful.
The rain garden that we're building is going to take water from like both sides of the Marshalloo Parkway, this has got a lot of hills over here, so a lot of water, you can see the water coming down. And so that's gonna go across and keep it filled with water there. I mean, this is a great place to like flood things, but no one wants to do it because the aqueduct is right. See, this is the reservoir, the aqueduct runs here, so
Yeah.
we're kind of limited to what we can do.
Alan, we're working with John McLaughlin on that on a regular basis, and we are very proud. It's a beginning, but we'd like to expand the green in this area, just because it's hilly. So Karen, thank you very much, and I will distribute this to our speakers today, an example of how we've been proactive and community-based, and I think it's a good model for how communities can be stakeholders in flood mitigation planning. So with that, I'd like to move on to old business, and I don't think we have any. The only old business that we had was the curbside composting date, which I told you about. So a member of our community had new business, and that member of the community is Jody Colon. So Jody, would you like to bring up your new business? You've been to more locales today than, wow.
Sorry,
Are you going to give us a site visit, actually? Is that what you're
I'm going to see if I could pull it off, so just bear with me. So
I feel like history is being made here.
it
I've
is,
never had a community board meeting with a site visit.
it's very dark out here, so
Be careful.
I'm off the side of the road. So I reported on October 13th a sinkhole next to a manhole on the path of the Metro of the Hudson Rail Link, which goes to the Metro North Station. It's heavily trafficked area. It is becoming wider by the day. I put it in through 311, but Effie, that's one of the things that you have to give an address to. And unfortunately, there are no addresses on this street. So I wrote detailed notes, and it seems that DEP hasn't been able to find this. It is along the sewer line. It was patched a month and a half ago, but it is still busted. So let me see if I can.
No, we know about that one. That's Edsel Avenue by the Spiden-Duyvil Metro North Station, correct?
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah,
so,
we have it.
Can you see it? So it is, I got my shovel. It's fairly deep. And now it is being covered by leaves and cars can't see it. And it's been over a month, Effie. So if you've known about it, can you talk to me about the process and why it's such a dangerous thing? It's probably 4 to 5 feet wide at this point, and the street is collapsing further. So can you explain the process of how this is going to get fixed again?
So one of the other things that DEP handles are sinkhole conditions. Realize something, that the agency in charge of all sinkhole conditions and street conditions in general is not DEP, it's DOT. So DOT has ownership of the streets. They come out and they decide if another agency or utility needs to address something, or if it's something that they have to take care of. This, there was a cave-in, I think, on Edsel Avenue, or street condition on Edsel Avenue, if I'm not mistaken, in July, that we came out and we backfilled it. And now another complaint came out last month. And I believe we spoke with Kiera, me and DOT was going to come back out because the street has some overall conditions other than just that one, okay?
Yeah.
So
here's another patch from that same thing.
Correct.
And it runs all over the whole street, and it is directly in the sewer line. And my understanding is that DOT reported it as a sewer defect, which is why I'm asking you, because it's the same sewer line. If you could see, here's another patch that they put in. It's a little shadowy, but here's another patch. There's about 30 patches along the sewer line on the road, and they keep collapsing.
Right. I think the street has some overall issues that need to be addressed. And DOT was going to look into it. at the last DSC meeting that we had. So I will follow up with Kiara on that. As you could see, there's more street conditions that are not part of that location there. The entire street has some issues going on. So I'm not sure if a street restoration project for the entire street would be something that should be considered by DOT. So let me just double check with Kiara if she heard back from DOT on what their plans are. The entire street, as you are showing us, has issues.
Right, and this is exactly what we were talking about, the river. So you can see this falling, which is from the water. And
Right.
this is a steep hill. I'm sorry if I'm making you seasick, but this is my first live Zoom. I have my
I love
flashlight
this.
on.
I'm going to insist on this
So,
at all meetings now.
so the water comes, you can actually see the path of the water.
This is so
It comes
fun.
here. All these leaves is a giant ditch, which I will fall in. So it comes down this hill, crosses over here, floods this area. So that's why I was asking about rivers, because I actually have videos of all of this. And why I'm asking DEP, because it's not street condition. It is the exact same sewer pipe that was that giant sinkhole up on Johnson Avenue at Edsel that took months to fix. So I'm gonna turn back to see me. So that's part of why I'm asking all these very specific questions about rivers of water and the pooling and the damage that they're creating, because this becomes very hazardous when the street edges are collapsing from the water runoff.
Correct, right.
So
Thank you for sharing that with us, Jody. It's very brave of you to go out there at night and do that.
I think it's so cool, and you're a great cinematographer too.
Well, thank you.
Laura has her hand up. Laura has a hand.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize our chair, Laura Spalter. I've seen her hand. Thank you. Laura, go ahead.
We can't hear you. Maybe she doesn't have her hand up.
I thought she raised her hand.
Apologize. I apologize. I was muted. I'm
Okay.
here. Okay,
Go
great to
ahead.
see you. Great to
Yeah.
see you, Effie. Sorry. Deb could speak to this more than I, but tomorrow night's TNT meeting, it's a discussion about the enhanced sidewalk at Cape Park and Palisade, which from what I read, from what DOT is planning, they were reaching out to DEP to plan a real bioswale or rain garden in the middle of this, large cement area. When I saw that, I said, I really should check in with you, Effie, as to whether there has been any, and you might not be able to answer this, reaching out to DEP on a bioswale at Cape Park and Palisade.
Where is it?
Cape Park and Palisade Avenue.
We were just talking about Edsel Avenue.
No, this is a different, this is
I
different.
see you're raising something else.
I'm raising tomorrow night's issue.
Okay, Laura,
TNT.
can I before we go on, I thought you were going to speak to Edsel. Effie,
Oh,
do
no,
you-
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Does someone in DOT produce an engineering report or a some kind of technical report of the street condition? Who initiates that? Because there's all kinds of water underlying erosion stuff in the sewer, and I'm hearing a lot of different things about the condition of the street. There's flooding on top of the street, and then there's a sewer problem underneath. So, Effie, who generally produces the technical data about the street itself, the condition, so we can figure out what we have to do?
I'm not sure exactly what type of technical data DOT would provide, but any complaint about a street condition will go to DOT. Now, how did they determine if it's something that they will address internally versus something they will send out externally, maybe a question to ask them specifically how they proceed. But if there's undermining or a cave-in condition, that's when they tend to give it to DP. And the purpose for that is to see, is there a broken pipe underneath that's causing the undermining that needs to be addressed? A property service line or a DEP water main or sewer main. That is the reason they send it to DEP. Or else it's something that they would address for the street.
And
so
Effie, how will you investigate the underlying or under the water damage underneath?
So our field operations, for example, will get a street cave-in condition. They get something called a corrective action report, a CAR from DOT. We get the CAR, we send our field ops to assess it and see what's going on. They will check their infrastructure and see what's around. If there's a hydrant near there, if it's a water main or a sewer. If it's water, they tend to sound the infrastructure. If they get no sound, that means there's nothing broken or leaking. Sometimes we will check adjoining properties if they have service lines coming through. If there's water in that cave-in, that's usually a sign that something's broken, leaking. It may not be our infrastructure, may be a property owner's infrastructure. So there's a whole assessment that goes on that does not just take an hour or two. It could take a couple days, maybe a couple weeks sometimes.
Of course. Effie, would you be able to confirm if a CAR has been completed for this complaint?
For which one, Edsel?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they've issued DEP a CAR on that because that was the reason why we came out and backfilled it. So I just want to follow up now because my understanding was that the street throughout the entire stretch of Edsel Avenue, there were street conditions. So that does not sound to me like a leaking pipe kind of complaint. That sounds like the street needs to be maybe resurfaced.
Right. Effie, but those street conditions run exactly where the underlying pipe is. It is, don't ask me how I know, but I know that that is exactly the path of the pipe. And you can follow all the asphalt patches and it follows the sewer pipe that was the sewer pipe up on Johnson that had a level 5 defect in multiple places. So I'm showing you right now the other part of it, which is the eroded side of the road. This is like 2 feet deep in some places. And this belongs to MTA, not DOT. I believe this is where the MTA piece starts, but it's a bigger condition, not just for the road, but this is the hard part for me for 311 is I know that it's multiple agencies, but 311 doesn't give you the ability to report to multiple agencies. And if DOT just patches and you don't fix the leak in the pipe, the road collapses again. And I did this for 7 months with Johnson Avenue. And this is going to be an extreme hazard in the winter. People can't even see that hole right now with all the leaves. So it was annoying and an issue, but now it's becoming a hazard. And I just don't want to hear a bus crash and lose its wheel and pitch the 20 feet through the fence down into the park. So, so can you have my email, Effie, right? So if you can just, I'll be happy to, I have retired, so I am available. I would be happy to meet a DEP inspector at their convenience to discuss this and walk the whole street and show those issues to them. Because you have the bridge runoff contributes to it as well.
So Jody, this is Deb. A question for you about just kind of desired outcomes. I mean, obviously it sounds like the sewer line needs to be addressed and sounded and made sure that it's sound, but that it also looking at it, it seems like the road really needs to be just reconstructed. Is that not true? Is that true? Or would you say just if they fix the sewer and they can just repave it and you won't have more of this instability at the edges and the spalling?
Well, see, that's why I was excited that Erica and Alan stayed on after that presentation, I mean, this is a huge amount of water. It does go into storm sewers. It also is linked to a capital budget request that's been in there since I was on the committee in the 90s. There is a old stream that has been put underground and buried that I think maybe contributed to some of this flooding. And also is the flooding in the Spuyten Duyvil Metro North parking lot. So it's Metro North, DOT, DEP, and I think there's ways to divert this water into the park, do some green landscaping to hold some of this water, because if you look at the flood maps, Edsel Avenue is the line, because from where I'm standing, let me see if I could do this again. It's dark and my flashlight is not working, but there is from here, let me see, there's a 20-foot drop. So after this fence, if you climb over this fence, you can walk about 3 feet, and then there's a 20-foot drop. So all of the flood things show that as a flood area. So my big dream, Deb, is to help restore Spuyten Duyvil Shorefront Park, which is what is under the bridge, and divert some of this water off the street, out of the storm drains. The Henry Hudson storm water goes into the pond, use the pond under the park as a kettle basin for water storage, which is what it used to be, but the bridge construction has silted it in. So I do have big, giant dreams, but step by step, let's make the road not a hazard, and talk about an interagency approach to this that could store and divert a lot of water in this very steep part of Spuyten Duyvil.
I think this is worth a separate meeting apart from DSC, so I'll get on this. I invite you, Jody, DOT, and Effie will, and of course the DM and Laura, if she can make it. I think this is worth a meeting. Thank you very much, Jody.
I only bring you complex problems.
Thanks. And Lori had your hand up. Do you want to speak about the proposed?
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted that
That's
flow.
okay. That's okay.
Okay, so Deb could also speak to this, and David, tomorrow night, DOT is not coming, unfortunately, but they did send us a rendering, and they did send a little bit of explanation, and part of it mentioned DEP, that there would be green infrastructure within this large cement area at Cape Park and Palisade to break up the cement and to absorb water. Flooding's been a huge problem. So I'm wondering, Effie, you may not be able to answer this. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Has DEP been contacted by DOT on this site, to your knowledge?
I'm actually looking at an email right now that the community board, somebody from the community sent it to the board about Palisades and Capoc, but I don't see anything specific. So I'll have to
Nothing
follow
from
up.
DOT, nothing from DOT saying, hey, we're planning.
They may have sent to somebody else. I
see.
can't
Okay,
just say
okay.
they, remember, we have a whole staff of field operations, and they have their own field operations, and they also communicate. It's not just community affairs. So I will look into it before your meeting tomorrow. Hopefully I can get an answer for you on what's going on our end.
Right. They may be coming in December. Like I said, they're not presenting, but they did send this, and in their words, they mentioned DEP, and I said, oh, let me just check.
Can you forward it to me, Laura?
Yeah, I'll have to find it, and I will forward that to you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Effie, just to follow up on that, the broader context is that there's a sidewalk that's been installed at Palisade and Capoc, and the residents would like there to be green infrastructure, so to break out some of the concrete and put in green infrastructure. My understanding is that we were having trouble getting green infrastructure in this district, in this community board, because we're not really part of the zone. So
That's why I'm confused why DOT said that. That's why I wanted to see what exactly they noted there. Mhm.
yeah, because I was wondering really what the criteria DEP would use to determine if outside of that zone piece, which I think we don't qualify for, if there's any criteria that they would use that we might qualify for. That makes sense.
So CBA, you're referring to green infrastructure, correct?
Yeah.
So CBA, as was mentioned before, as we have been telling the community board for a while now, unfortunately, due to bedrock and other conditions like that, green infrastructure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, is not conducive. I'm assuming in the future, other ideas may come up green infrastructure wise that can be considered. But I've been told in the CB8 area, there's a lot of bedrock, and that is a major issue. So that's why right now, when you're telling me that KPOC and Palisades, DOT is talking about a green infrastructure project, I'm not sure if it's a DEP project or some other agency project or what they're actually talking about.
So I would suggest at tomorrow's meeting handling this and having directing DOT to contact DEP directly.
Yeah, I'll look into it as well. I'll inquire with our GI unit.
And Deb, if you wouldn't mind reporting on this at if there's going to be a handshake at a future meeting between the agencies to install GI there at that location. So that would be good to hear about it next meeting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You'll hear my shouts of enthusiasm from.
Good. Is there future business, more new business?
I just want to finish up my techie. Rob is going to send that to you, Effie.
Thank you so
The little
much.
explanation and the site, and a handshake would be significant. So that's very interesting. We'll be watching that.
Thanks so much.
Bob, I have one more new business thing.
Really?
In addition to curbside, our district is one of the districts that will get a separate leaf collection. So even the buildings that did not sign up for curbside, even the houses that did not sign up for curbside, they can put leaves out. It's on the sanitation website. I think it's the week of December 11th. And if sanitation picks up your trash, they will sometime during that week come pick up your leaves. So that was reinstated. So we're not just going to get the brown bins where you can put leaves and food scraps out, but there's a separate special one-time leaf collection for everybody.
Also, I neglected to say in my chair's report, there's a leaf crunch this Saturday.
Thank you. My event, come join me. It is at Saturday on 10:30 to 12 at Henry Hudson Park. I've brought 3 different groups together. So there's one on Saturday at Bruss Park at, I believe, 9 o'clock. And there's 2 on Sunday at Ewan Park and Bruss Park. So
did you say Sunday at Ewan Park?
Yeah, so on Saturday, it is Henry Hudson Park and Bruss Park. And on Sunday, it is Bruss Park and Ewan Park. You can email me, spitendivalny@gmail.com. I can send you the exact times. All of these groups will be raking leaves for composting. Ewan Park and Bruss Park have giant leaf corrals. So we'll crunch the leaves up. There have been some social media comments about, oh, leave the leaves for biodiversity. The person has only part of the answer. You have to mow them into teeny little bits. So crunching them for composting is much more fun and faster. So
thank you, Jody.
Come join us.
You did say you retired from an agency, but it's better stated that you are an agency.
Well, this is what Friends of Spite and Dival used to be before I started working crazy hours at NYPG. So now I'm going back to my roots.
Happy to have back. Any future new business? Motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for a really great meeting. I will see you next month. We have a shared meeting with Parks and to discuss daylighting, DEP, and parks are both going to be attending. So I'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks for a great meeting.
Good night,
Thanks
everybody.
for having
Good
us.
night.
Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.